Hi. Why does it feel like you just hung up with me? I mean, we're online about a half hour ago live, and we'll be live a half hour after Susan and I finish this one, and then we have a whole hour before our Japanese session hits at 11 o'clock New York time tonight. I want to introduce you to someone who's a friend and a champion for children. Her name is Susan McLean. You may know her as the Cybercop. You may just know her as Susan. Hi, Susan.
Hey, Parry, and hello to everyone who's watching.
Now, are you in Melbourne today?
I am in Melbourne. Last time we did this, I think I was chatting from Sydney, but I'm in Melbourne and I think I'll be staying here for the next little while because of all the travel issues and the bans that are in place.
So are you on lockdown in Melbourne or suggested stay at home?
No, they've not done a lockdown, don't leave the house. They've basically said schools will continue to open and non-essential travel. So all Australians have been prohibited from leaving the country, so we can't go overseas. Domestic travel is still fine. Schools are still working, but certainly we need to be, careful. No gatherings inside of under 100, but I believe that will be reduced down to 50 on Friday.
Well, we even have a curfew where I am. I'm about 15 minutes from Manhattan in New Jersey, and we have a curfew. So somehow from 8 at night to 5 in the morning, you're going to catch viruses more than you would during the day. And you can't get toilet paper anywhere. We're preparing for blizzards too.
No. We've got the toilet paper situation. We've got panic buying of everything, even mincemeat.
Well, we don't have a problem with mincemeat. I don't think anybody wants it in the United States, so I can send that to you.
I don't know why anyone would want mincemeat. It says a lot about their culinary skills or lack thereof.
I'm never quite sure what it is, but it always sounds like it has meat in it. It's supposed to be dessert, and I would never do it. And in Canada, they eat it all the time. So
make spaghetti bolognese, fine, but who wants to live on that for the next 6 months, really?
All right. Well, we have been spending the last day and a half, almost 2 days now, talking about crimes against children, and the world has changed a lot since I started 26 years ago. Since you started, you were law enforcement long before, and you dealt with these things and put bad guys in jail and dealt with children directly. And then you came out of it and said, I can reach a lot more kids if I can go to schools and if I can speak and talk to the influencers. And that's been pretty extraordinary. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I was a member of Victoria Police for 27 years. And the first time I became aware that the internet could be misused was in February 1994, so 26 years ago. And some year 8 schoolgirls got together. They went into a chat room bulletin board and they put up an ad and offered their friend for free sex. They used her real name, her real address, and her phone number. And all of a sudden, that family had a steady stream of men knocking on the door looking for their 13-year-old daughter.
Amazing. We had a similar case in the United States where a neighbor didn't like a little girl who was 9, and it was near Chicago, in one of the suburbs of Chicago. And she had written in chalk, "hello," on his driveway. And he was so angry that he went online, pretended to be her, and said that she had been having her sex with her dad for a long time, and she wanted new partners, name, address, telephone number. And these people would drive by and call. And one day the mom said, "Why are you calling?" And they said, "Well, your daughter invited us in." She said, "She's 9." And that was one of our earliest cases. So we've learned a lot over the years.
We have, and the landscape's changed. I mean, there was no such thing as social media. MSN hadn't been the first form of instant messaging. AOL Messenger and MSN, they hadn't been invented yet. So you were really limited to listservs, bulletin boards, chat rooms, IRC. That was about it.
Yeah, I remember IRC, Internet Relay Chat. So that was the old-fashioned internet. And we were the marshals of IRC then, when we used to be called Cyber Angels, and we'd go in and find people and do those things at night.
I think the thing that most people, particularly parents, don't understand is that, yes, the internet offers wonderful benefits, but there are negatives. And never before in the history of the world have so many predators had such ease of access to their next potential victim.
And they really have. And parents don't understand it. You were overly afraid of a stranger pulling up in front of our house and grabbing our children off the front lawn and putting them into a white van. And we're not afraid enough and concerned enough and aware enough about what's happening online.
No, and of course, it's exactly the same thing. A stranger's coming into your house through technology. I had a young boy this week who said, "Oh, but when I'm talking to my random friends online," I said, "Well, you don't have random friends online. You either have a friend online that you know, or if you're speaking to someone that you're calling random, that's a stranger. And, you at age 8 should not be talking to that stranger, nor inviting them into your lounge room through technology." I've had parents tell me that their child is smart enough to pick a pedophile. I'm not sure how that works. That would be fabulous if it was true.
Yeah,
And I'm
I think
sure
Victoria
John Houck
Police
would
would
be
hire
excited
them.
to hear
Yeah.
that. But there's these misconceptions that these people are mean and nasty and horrible, and they're going to tell people that, which, of course, that's the end result. It's not the start result. And kids are, of course, inherently trusting. So it's not difficult for that level of trust to be obtained. The grooming starts, and then we all know where that goes.
We do, and we've looked at serial killers and serial molesters over the year, and they never look like the people in a scruffy raincoat hanging on the corner with a big hat and a black beard. They are attractive, they are charming, and that's how they get to our kids.
That's right. And I'm often asked, what does a pedophile look like? And I said, well, they normally look average and normal. They don't draw attention to themselves. They can talk to children. They're charismatic. They have opportunity. So we have to help children not to become the opportunity, is the way I tackle it when I'm trying to educate.
Well, the area I think we really need to focus on a great deal. And, I've had heartache over some comments about safe sexting that have been made by experts on the internet. Our young people are voluntarily taking sexual images or sexually provocative images of themselves and sharing them with the world, sharing them with somebody they think they know, sharing them with somebody they know. And it's become almost normative. And yet their peers, as they get older, and internet sexual predators, real creeps, are getting a hold of these things and blackmailing our children, sextorting them to take more pictures, get their friends involved, or pay them money. So I'd love to focus on sexting and sextortion and what you think we might be able to do about it.
Well, the thing is, again, it's an opportunistic crime. So when I talk to parents, I talk about, does your child have the opportunity to take these photos? So that means if their device is in a bedroom or a bathroom, the answer is yes. So we need to get devices out of those rooms into a place that parents are aware of and can supervise. This covers off the child that might think it's hysterically funny to share a nude photo just for a joke. I call that toilet humor. It covers off the hormonal teenager that's trying to impress a partner or has been told that this is how you prove that you like me. And then it works for the pedophiles as well. If children don't have the opportunity to take these photos, to be manipulated online, to strip naked on a webcam, the offender will move on to the next potential victim. And if that person doesn't become a victim, then they move to the next one. So we've got to do what we can to limit that. But the sextortion is very real. And I know John Rouse would say the statistics is something like 2/3 of all abusive images, if you like, that are found in pedophile catalogues are self-generated and not necessarily the pedophile convincing the child to share that photo, but ones, as you said, they've gathered off other places on the internet. That self-generated content that is now being used for a purpose that it wasn't designed for.
Yeah, and so I was particularly concerned. There are some internet safety experts who I respect in cyberbullying spaces who said that, we should teach children safer sexting. And my position was there is no safer sexting. The moment it is traded or even on a device and hasn't gone anywhere, if anybody else can get that device, it can get out to the world. And we're seeing suicides and self-harm coming from the fact that these are exposed. Even the most trusted partner, his mom may be checking whatever's on the cell phone, younger brother may be using it for games, his friends may be using it for whatever. And so even unintended, these things get out. Is there such a thing as safe sexting?
No, there's certainly, I suppose you could say there is safer sexting in that if your face is not in the picture, will they know it's you? Well, your friends might not, but The reality is no. There is no safe way to share nude images of yourself, because the reality is that they're out there, they're permanent, they stay there, and pedophiles end up with them. The other thing I can remember many years ago was we had someone in Australia telling kids, just chop your head off. No one will know it's you. It's the safest and easiest way. And then what was happening is, the boys were getting these headless nudes. They were showing to their mates and playing a game called Guess the Body. And then they were sharing it. And of course, most of the boys couldn't guess the body because they didn't really know what this girl looked like naked. But the girls' female friends, by about the second female that saw it, said, oh, that's Sarah Smith. I can tell by the picture in the background. I've been in her bedroom. Or I can tell that's Jessica Wilson's Doona cover. And of course, if you think back, that's how the FBI's Innocent Images database came about, where law enforcement around the world dialed in to view these photos in a hope that, like the picture that's sitting behind me now, that someone can look at that and go, oh, hang on a minute, that's something that's come from Victoria Police in Melbourne. So then we're going to narrow down the physical location of that young person.
Well, there was a case in the United States, actually not terribly far from me in New Jersey, where a young girl broke up with her boyfriend. He broke up with her because she wasn't willing to engage in sexual activities. She was 15. And then he said he'd go back with her if she sent a topless picture. So she came up with this idea, I'll cut my head off. But to have the support of her two best friends, she put her arms around the friend. So head, breast, head, and her head was out of the picture. Yeah. And the picture got out. The boy just wanted the picture. He didn't want the girl back. And they shared it with everyone. And her 13-year-old brother got a copy of this picture, having no idea it was his sister in it, and saw her friends and was enjoying this picture for a couple days before he realized it was his own sister, which is that creep factor that sometimes helps us a little bit. I'm not quite sure what we do here, but we have to do something because we're losing kids.
Yeah. And the other compounding issue is, whether we like it or not, or agree or disagree, in most parts, or in all parts of the world, it's criminal because it fits within the definition of child exploitation material. There are places that now have put amendments to their laws in, so that when young people are consensually sharing these images in certain situations, the police can go down the path of education rather than criminal justice. But we're not there yet. So again, how can you, I suppose, morally or ethically teach a child how to potentially commit a crime? Because the police officer is not going to care. Some of them might, but most of them are not going to think, oh, well, you've chopped your head off, I won't arrest you. It's still a crime, it's a crime, and this is why we need very clear guidelines for this. And, Victoria here in Australia has done an amazing job. I was part of the Law Reform Commission review that looked into this. So we've got the crime still takes place, but provided 4 things are present in the situation, then it's not child exploitation material. So that's really good. It's easy. Just tick the box. This, and this. New South Wales, they came up with, oh, yes, it's still a crime. Then they've added like a disclaimer, which is, as you would know as a lawyer, this is ridiculous. They say something like, if in light of the circumstances, the behaviour could be deemed, a reasonable person could accept the behaviour, or something like that. How does that work at law? Like, you can trot 10 people out that would have a different idea of reasonable in the circumstances, what a reasonable person would see. Laws shouldn't be that. Laws need to be very clear, concise. There should be no way to misrepresent them, and they've got to provide that guidance. So the way we did it in Melbourne was, we have these 4 things that have to be present. 1, in relation to the sharing of the photo, no threat, fear, coercion, harassment, on sharing, or threat to on share. Not more than 2 years age difference between the people. No adult involved, so you can't have an 18 and 16-year-old, and no other criminal act depicted in the photo. So provided those 4 things, you can tick those boxes, then the police can deal with you down the education path. But and that then means that pedophiles can't use these exceptions to weasel out of charges as well.
Well, and Canada was the first country that took was criminals child pornography or child sexual images and materials that was taken by young people, and said it's not a crime if it's consensual, etc. In the United States, federally, it's still a crime. and that's across the United States, and the FBI has jurisdiction, et cetera. But
Yeah.
in the various states, I worked with some of the states to come up with the ability of the prosecutor to decide not to prosecute. And it's ironic because you can, if you have children within a certain number of years apart and it's consensual, et cetera, they can engage in sex. But if they take a picture, it's a crime. And so, we may want to look at that. But the issue here is the third parties. When it gets into the hands of the sex traffickers and the pedophiles and anybody else who's involved, that child's now in play. And we saw Amanda Todd. Her suicide was always blamed on cyberbullying. It was really sextortion related. And we've seen so many other cases like this. And it's time to do something. But saying, I'll teach you how to sext safer is just not realistic. And I think
I think it sets children up for failure. And it sets them up to end up in a situation that they have no idea about because they thought what they were doing was the safe way to do it. I mean, there's clearly a safe way to drive a car versus a dangerous way to drive a car, both legal activities. But that's the issue. And, it's an argument that I have along when people talk about, party drugs. No, it's an illegal substance. It's not a party drug. You are breaking the law by consuming this drug. So, when we diminish the seriousness of something through language, it doesn't help anyone, especially vulnerable young people.
Today, I had 4 of our teen angels in a discussion. They're relatively new teen angels, so I like doing that. And they're actually in the town that was locked down before any place else in the United States. And they were online with me, and we started talking in a live session. And I said, what's going to stop this? And they said, well, kids don't know that it's a crime. I said, will knowing it's a crime make a difference if your boyfriend said, if you don't send me a picture, I'm going to break up with you? Well, no. I said, anybody who's been arrested? And I do, but they didn't. I had to go on The View with Whoopi Goldberg and try to stop prosecutions against a girl. But and they said, no, it really wouldn't make any difference. So I said, but other than telling people that it's a crime, how else can we get them to stop doing this? And they said, well, if we could stop them just before they send it, because it's impulsive. So I said, if we came up with a technology, as you're getting ready to send a sext saying, wait a minute, is this, these things can happen. And they're like, we just turn it off because we don't want anything getting between us and any self-generated image, even the good ones. So I said, so what do we do? Well, we'll educate them. So I said, all right, okay. And I still don't have answers, but I know one answer isn't, you can do it if you trust the person. You have to trust them. Okay.
Because that's the problem. Betrayal is real. I always say to them, trust me, I promise. If you like me, you trust me, I promise. People lie, particularly boys. So, no young girl wants to think that they're going to be betrayed, but they clearly are. I had a case, I'd left the police force, it was only a couple of years ago, where a young girl had sent a nude photo of herself to a boy she liked. It fitted within the force, so there was no criminal charges at that particular point. But then he got demanding for more photos. And he said, well, I don't really care, because if you don't keep sharing photos with me, I'll post what I've got. In the end, when she came to me, she said, I've sent him one photo a week for 6 months because I felt that keeping him happy was a better option. And, I said, well, that's a crime. That's, sextortion. He was arrested, relatively easy to deal with because it was, Tom from the school down the road. It wasn't some random person on the internet. But, I've had children that are in, like here in Australia, we have selective entry high schools. So you have to pass an academic test to go to them. So these are the brightest of the bright.
Okay.
And I had a 15-year-old girl at one of those schools being sextorted. And she said, I'm really disappointed in myself, but I also can't understand it because I'm really smart. And she wasn't saying that to boast. Right. She's academically brilliant, this young girl. And she said, but I was new to the school. I didn't have many friends. He was really nice to me. He made myself feel good about myself. So I trusted him.
Yeah.
And it's that adolescent logic. I had another boy said, well, I've got one of her. She'll have one of me. That's an insurance policy, right? We're equal.
Yeah. We both have them. And nobody cares about the boys' picks. Nobody cares about them at all.
But they rationalize it in a way that is acceptable to them, which you can absolutely understand.
Mutual destruction.
Yeah, but that's why we've got to just keep chipping away at this. We've got to, remove the opportunity. I talk about parents being the friend instead of being the parent. Your job is to be the parent and to make the decisions that your children can't and won't make, don't have the capacity to make because they can't perceive or foresee risk. But I had a mum 2 days ago. I was driving to school and I'm really worried about my daughter. She's on social media 24 hours a day. She's viewing it all night. What can I do? I said, well, you take the device off her and you disconnect the internet. Oh, but do I really need to do that? I said, well, yes, you do. And it shouldn't have got to this in the first place. But there's so many, disempowered parents out there that I think have forgotten the word no. Let things go until they blow up.
Yeah. And the one phrase that gives me chills is, I trust my child.
Yeah.
I'm happy you trust your child, but do you also trust all the billions of people on the internet? Do you trust them too?
Yeah.
And we forget.
And it can't be blind trust. It's not blind trust. There's a big difference between giving your child a task to do because you trust that they have the capacity to do it. The common denominator when I'm working with parents and schools in any of these online issues, sex stuff particularly, is the principal or the headmaster would always say to me, out of all the students in my school, I cannot believe this student did it. I would have classed them in the least likely category. And good kids make poor choices. I have their parents all the time. I can't believe my child, who I've educated, engaged with, had conversations with, still stuffed up. And I think it's because people don't really realize how easy it is to do online.
And how their friends don't criticize them. It's becoming really more of the norm. So we need to start teaching friends when they see a friend get ready to do this, to take the device away from them in the same way we take the car keys away from someone who's drinking at a party.
And good friends don't keep bad secrets. And if someone's your friend, they're not going to encourage or egg you on to make a very poor choice. That's not a friend.
That's very interesting. We need to recognize that our kids are young and our kids make bad decisions, or they make impulsive decisions, and they have raging hormones, and they're afraid of whatever's going on. And a lot of the time we're seeing when there's self-harm and suicide attempts or suicides following sextortion, it's with the girls in particular who are the most conservative. They come from devout Christian families. They're part of, pastor services. They're very involved. They vow they will never engage in sex until they're married. And this is a way for them to keep a boyfriend without putting out. So it's only a picture. And then when that picture gets out, these are so conservative that picture is even more devastating to them. And we've seen a lot of suicides that come from that. And it's such a complicated issue.
It is. And there's not a tick the box solution. But again, it's got to be attacked from many areas. I think one of the most important ones is not to decriminalize it, but to put in those exceptions so that the police have an option, because no 16-year-old should be a registered sex offender anywhere in the world because they shared a nude photo of themselves with a partner. That's not what laws were written for. So we've got to be mindful of that. We certainly don't want loopholes that pedophiles can use to weasel out of charges, so we need to make sure that they're robust. But we also have to educate, and we have to educate parents. I had a mum recently whose daughter had an online friend. Her friends came to the school and said, I'm a bit concerned about Sarah because she's talking to this strange person online. And, mum was all okay with that. And, he's just really nice and rah, rah, rah. Was living allegedly in a different country. And all of a sudden panic stations because he wasn't in a different country and he was going to rock up at school and pick her up on Friday. And it took that before the mum actually thought, oh dear, this is not what should be happening.
Yeah, and sometimes the moms will get on the phone and talk to them, not on video, because then their real age and who they are would be more obvious, but they'll do it on the phone. He seems like such a nice boy. We had a case here in the United States in pre-1996. where a young girl met this boy and he claimed he had been abused. His mom didn't love him. Her brother had died because of an illness. And so everything was falling apart in her life. And the mom and the father both talked to this guy and said, oh, he sounds like a nice 16-year-old. She should come and stay with us sometime. In the meantime, he's demanding pictures. And he had molested his stepchildren, and he worked in social services a few states away. This was a really bad guy, but the parents somehow thought that they can tell the difference between a bad guy and a good one.
Yeah. And again, these people don't go now. Just before we start, just to let you know, I'm a registered child sex offender, but I am really nice. So, you might as well hang out with me. And this is what they think. They think it's going to be in the bio on Instagram, registered sex offender, or the Facebook page is going to be called Percy the pedophile, interest, schoolgirls, or schoolboys. So this is the thing. I think, yes, parents have grown up with social media, parents of the parenting generation at the moment, but, basing their decisions on what their children do on their own experience is flawed, because their Instagram feed is probably full of cats, dogs, and food, but your child's will not be. And that's what you have to understand. Oh, but I don't post photos, or she's always clothed. Yep. So I don't even understand that argument. Yes. Oh, but I know not to post them naked. Yep. But what do you think pedophiles collect?
They get into their heads.
Yeah, I like the look of that child. Therefore, I'm going to follow them on TikTok, or I'm going to follow them on Instagram, because I can get photos of them and I can put them in my catalog. And if someone else likes them, I can trade them. I can make some money out of them. Just no idea.
And we're seeing a lot of boys now who are being sextorted through games. So a lot of it's coming out of Russia and the former Eastern Europe.
Yeah,
and the boys are playing a video game that has a video feed, and this girl befriends them, and she said, oh, I really like you. You're wonderful. And she's attractive. And she ends up taking her clothes off. And then she said, she went first. Now it's your turn. And the boys figure it's okay because she went first. They take off their clothes. There's a photo snapped, and it's like ransomware. A screen comes up and it says, pay us $500, or this goes to all these people because they know who they are. They've been playing games. And a lot of people don't realize that. I got a phone call.
I had exactly that situation 2 years ago I had two 17-year-old boys in different states from, prestigious private schools. And that's the thing. These people get into their social group online, so they have access to their family and friends. Always send it first to, placate them and look, it's okay. And that's what that young boy said to me. I've got one of her. She'll have one of me. We'll be equal. And then it's the demands for money straight away. And, I said, this is not, these are organized criminal gangs. Yeah. Working out of call centers in Eastern Europe and Russia and Africa, just waiting for their next victim. They don't care who their victim is. They just wait for someone to become the opportunity.
That's it. And it's so frightening. And Susan, I know that there are a lot of people who love to hear funny cat videos and things about Joe, my cybersafety service dog, and all of the things. And these are hard things for people to hear. And it's the life that you have selected as a law enforcement officer, and afterwards. And I selected, although as a lawyer, I saw a 3.5-year-old being raped on the internet, and it changed my life. And I think that, those of us who stand on the line and say, you can't get past me, I think, although there are lots of law enforcement there, those of us who started in the olden days where we hadn't figured it out on our own, and something occurred, and I'd call you, you'd call me, we'd both call dogs.
There were no law enforcement liaison officers on social media pages back then to get any sort of help. Excuse me. And that's the thing. And I think, yes, the internet, without a doubt, best invention of my lifetime, hands down. But children are still the primary vulnerable population, and we have to do more, and we have to do better to protect them. And, we can't have, I've had people say, oh, what you're saying is scary. Or it might be scary to you, but it's factual. I don't use scare takers. I don't make stuff up. I don't embellish the truth. This is the reality. Father last week said, oh, you talked about a pedophile. My 12-year-old doesn't know what a pedophile is. And I said, well, that's the perfect opportunity for you to sit down with your child at 12 and tell them what a pedophile is. And because if you don't know what it is, how do you protect yourself from them? And this was, I don't think it's appropriate for my child to know that. He was 12. He attended a boys' Catholic school. What planet are you on?
Yeah, I know. And they don't realize that the kids know all of this. Whereas a 10-year-old that we worked with out of the United States, and some boys were on the cell phone with her and a very precocious friend on a sleepover, and they said they wanted pictures of her pussy. And she was very confused because she only had a golden retriever. And that's how young she was. 10, just turned 10. Yeah. She was so young. And this is what's happening. And these kids at 10, when they want football players to like them, are sending naked pictures from the neck down from their cell phone accounts. Like you can't figure out who that is because it comes up with your name. And we need to protect our children from the lives that they're being forced into because of the technology. No child should be exposed to this, and they're all exposed to it now. And dick pics and craziness.
Children don't stay little as long now because of the insidious nature of technology and what they're exposed to. And parents will say to me, but it's on YouTube. What does that mean? Well, YouTube's not censored. It's not verified. It doesn't go through a classification system. People will often tell me that YouTube is, TV on a computer. No, it's not. You need to know how it works. And, and self-generated content doesn't get checked before it's uploaded, unless, of course, YouTube or Google is putting it into the app where they do check it.
DNA and some of the rest.
And things fail. But at least if it's in the app, no YouTuber has put it there themselves. It's been relied on a system taking it, checking it, and putting it there. But they don't understand that. I think there's been a really big drop in the number of people using filters. Yeah. Like I talk about, filtered internet. What does it mean? Well, it means that your child just can't find anything that they want. But they don't. I think for whatever reason, filters were a big thing perhaps 5-6 years ago. This year, I would suggest most of the children that access the internet at home that I've spoken to, there's no filter on the internet. They can find whatever they want. And then parents panic, and then they're really concerned about this. Or they put a filter on, assuming it's working, and don't check it.
And, their walled gardens, their blacklist, whitelist filter, all of these things, parents weren't using them terribly often. But I found that over the last 5 years, ever since I started spending so much time at Cybersafety India when we formed it, I've been sort of unavailable for 5 years in the normal US and on television the way we did it. And there are things that I missed. And we started looking at how to come up with better cyber safety education that talks to the younger kids with the animations and the games and the fun stuff. Yeah. And all of the good stuff that was out there, it's all gone. Yeah. I looked at them and I said, all of the stuff has been gone in the last 5 years. There are no assets that are good out there. Julie's got some good stuff, but there's so much that needs to be done. And I feel like I've wasted my life because I closed my eyes to the United States for the last 5 years. And now we have
it is blinking. That's for sure. It moves very quickly. But yeah, I think digital resources are important, but they need to be good, and you can't have them. Sorry, that's just my phone.
Oh, it's you. I was wondering where my phone was.
I had it turned off. I didn't think it would connect to my computer. Apologies for that. So yeah, we want good resources. They can't be cringeworthy. We've got to make sure that they're useful and ones that kids relate to, and that's why some of that game-based learning that NetSmarts always did so well was always handy, because you could play a game.
It's so old and gone.
Yeah, and learn a cyber safety message through playing the game. I think it is vital at the moment that parents get themselves up to speed, because in Australia we don't have school closures because of COVID-19. A school closes if they have a positive member of their school community. So there's isolated closures. And I think in Victoria there's 4 schools that have closed. So if we get to the point of having, extended school holidays and things like that, these children are going to be home at home, alone, often online, like never before. And they will be lonely, and anxious children will be more anxious. And you can just imagine someone connecting with them and, don't be scared, I'll be your friend, I'll help you. And parents just, will be oblivious to the problem until after it's really hit them in the face. And I think, we need to do this worldwide because, COVID-19 is right around the world.
And we're having, all of our schools are shut down. The United States is essentially fully shut down.
Yeah.
And the kids are home. They're stressed, which makes them more vulnerable. They're bored. Their friends can't come and play with them. They can't go outside. So we're already seeing a number of cases of people driving by in affluent towns in those white vans all of a sudden because the kids are unattended during the day.
Yeah.
And so much more of child sexual exploitation, approaches to the kids that we're seeing online. Already law enforcement, just in the last week, are seeing huge jumps. I talked to Anna Borgström today and from McLean, and she said that they're seeing a huge increase in the consumption of porn. And which is used to groom the kids. So it's time. And I'm thrilled that we will continue to work together, and I love it. We'll get our heads together and we'll really make this happen. And we'll get everybody we can together, and we'll turn around and say, this is what needs to happen. And don't tell me that the kids can safely sext.
Yeah, no, they simply can't. They simply can't.
So I love you very much.
Yeah, you too,
I really appreciate this. And you be good, stay safe, stay well.
Yeah, you too.
And keep all those kids safe for me.
Yeah. All right. Pleasure as always, and happy to chat at any time.
Great. Thank you so much. I love you lots.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.